What's good, YouTube, and welcome to the house. I can't remember the last time in Yu-Gi-Oh! History a set was so looked forward to as Power of the Elements. It's overshadowing completely the Nationals 22 format, which the biggest talk of the town is Jesse Cotton's take on this is not a healthy, diverse format, and other people adding on to the conversation. I personally think it's a bunch of decks on the backs of turn-long lingering floodgates, and the floodgates themselves no longer combo versus floodgate, but combo is using floodgates, right? But that's neither here nor there. We're seeing Power of the Elements sell out before it even hits shelves. Big 3 Deals has sold out mad early. We've seen Gamer's Choice sold out, and now Tier 0 has it a bit upped in price. Code What's Good 5 for 5% off and to support the channel directly. But if I was going for the sealed, it would be to keep it sealed as people do rush towards this. And also, you're still playing the speculatory game of how the Starlight rares will turn out. But with Tier Elements having a very bright future, we know in November that the Ishizu stuff is coming, supposing no delays on that product, right, Konami? It would be weird for the holiday box to not make it in time for the holidays, Konami. Please don't mess that one up. But I do think that a lot of people will be into it specifically for that, and that's the glimmer of hope for the holiday box. When we're looking at this, however, I think that splites will not interact the same and integrate into the TCG as the OCG because our ban list works around money. That's really what it comes down to, is reprints and how Konami wants to cash back in on cards in the TCG, and it doesn't have the same kind of balance system where things will get hit as fast usually. So we are still speculating when we're talking ban list and how a deck will perform, but just like DUEA, I feel like there's this much pressure and attention on it, and everybody expected Shadows to just clearly take over. Burning Abyss put a wrench in that plans, and I don't think Libromancer is going to put the same kind of wrench in those plans, right? But we'll wait and see what really does happen with Power of the Elements and how it will develop into our metagame, because half of the cards on each Market Watch have been around it. Again, no different here, starting with Deck Devastation, Virus, and its triple down buyout, the ultimate rare skyrocketing back to the moon, DR3 version back almost out of quantities, the ultra rare out of Legendary Collection Kaiba is pushing up even further, and the OG super rares are $10+ lowest. We're even talking damaged ones at this point, where lowest near mint is around 12 something and then quickly 15. People want a holographic version of this card because it is a decent anti-splice tech. But now even the commons pushing past $5 out of structure decks. So if you have these in your commons, you have them more towards the side of bulk things, which you should never have had this card near there. I always like to take cards out that have had potential or been used in past formats and keep them set aside away from bulk organized. But here's another card for you to be looking around for and at, especially common, as that anti-splice tech. Then we also see King of the Swamp for Tier Elements. The super rares out of Fusion Enforcers, I point to this out as being another super not as storied as the Hobby League one, which I actually do have stocked up. I've always loved that super rare. All of them are skyrocketing up in price for the nice version as they are used in Tier Elements, and even the commons are all pushing above $2, more towards $3 now. Exo Sisters, the deck that is pretty darn strong, but still feels like it's missing a piece to me, yet when I see it in action, I just can't help but actually like how it plays. Exo Sister Pax is now pushing up towards $17, $18 and going further beyond somewhat quickly. Another Exo Sister buyout after we saw the Starlight Xyz most recently, and it feels like every other week there's a different buyout for this deck. Nightmare Corruptor Ibli is picking up a lot of traction and sales rates. If you're interested in this one, you might want to get it sooner than later. I've heard that there's been attention brought to this through like Robbie's top 10 cards to buy from somebody in the Discord, but when it comes down to it, you are actually able to use this before Nibiru triggers in Splice. So essentially you normal summon any Splice, special summon another, you make the Xyz can summon something from deck, and you're going to be summoning this, but first you special summon another, you're on summon 4 if you're counting, and then you use the gigantic Splice effect to special summon, which also locks out Nibiru, and then Ibli's on the field, you're able to then link and give your opponent Ibli, and if they're not in a deck that is link summoning or a mirror match where they could potentially use this, then they are in big huge trouble. Again, this is seeing some niche play in the OCG. The ultra rare is starting to catch the secret rare, which I would think then would be pushing the secret rare up somewhat soon, though, because yeah, the ultras being 7s to 8s are pretty crazy. But do remember, people went after this card as Heat Soul was coming for Code Talker finally being here hype, and it hasn't done the most, but it's still a pretty neat deck. So people were already on Ibly, not for that reason, and now you're seeing huge sales rates really getting kicked up in the dust around this. Like, look at this. These are all in the past couple of days for Ibly. Kind of a crazy sales rate for this card. Now, for the EU people watching some representation, Daigusto Phoenix has been bought out for its English copies over on Card Market, but not over here on TCG. It's usually notable that the EU tends to lag a little behind the US market and look at what we're doing and then decide calmly, should I, shouldn't I? But instead here, we have one that really isn't very impactful in the OCG, yet we do see on TCG, it's had its kind of wave already where people went after, oh my gosh, it's a rank 2, dip back down, calm down, it's kind of at a higher price now, yet it's still around $12 for a DT Ultra, and the people aren't panicking, clamoring for the secret rare. There's an okay amount of them. My thoughts are this: yes, it's kind of a push for OTK tool, but the Splight Extra deck is so freaking tight as is that you do have one old Baboomer combo, right? You have Cat Shark already being played in the decks, and then you have a 30,000 attack twicer. It's kind of a nice thing for the deck. I just think your extra deck's probably better off with other cards, especially off the results of the OCG, but maybe somebody's cooked up, labbed a combo, maybe I've missed something. So let me know what you think about Daigusto Phoenix. I'm so used to saying Daigusto Emerald, I almost let that slip there. But with all the different techs that are either seeing some niche play and tops versus not really, but still getting bought out. That's how much speculation is swirling around the splites, right? It just happens to be there. And Cat Shark, a little calmer than it was, but still really up in price and needing a reprint. Swap Frog is up in price for all versions as it has been, but the ultimate rare is just really hopping up, and 340 lowest on its cooldown is kind of a wild ride to me, because you see that the market price indicates it's way lower, yet it actually has started to gain some sales in this range, and these are coming back after there was a time, you see these sales at 400, where it was completely cleared off of the market. Now let's talk about Starlights, because that's what everybody's focusing on with some really huge buyouts. Effect Veiler here is pushing near $800 for its Starlight, 100% feedback but lower rate seller at $790 before it's $800 even, and actual sales within that freaking range and even above. I think Effect Veiler is one of those hand traps that floats into formats, which is why I really like Ghost Spell, which is sitting at 300, but it also has a storied history in the game where people look at it and they remember Plant format and past other formats, so it has a mix into Time Wizard, but people will argue the ultimate versus this. Having two high rarities, though, doesn't really seem to affect this one, and Eternity Code was also shorted in production, if you recall, thus there are maybe a couple less of these versus other Starlights. Right now, Tier 0 has some 4-in-1s at almost half of the price, because you're seeing how it's jumping, and people do value the 4-ins less. Here's a light play Italian at $650, though, so not mint, but if you want those, code What's Good 5 for 5% off, and to support the channel directly will make them even cheaper. But there is that huge duality of English is king when it comes to the high-end collectibles, and these could sell less, although I could still see you getting like 600-ish, like pretty fast for these, depending on how these actually end up with their sales rates. But again, that's the other coin of Starlights, not a financial advisor channel. I don't know the future, how the market actually takes shape on the future of this, because Starlights are a very new market, but I would feel like you should be pretty easily able to move those, but English is king with high-end collectibles. Again, the Charmers are all getting a hard-focused and targeted area up in price towards $1,000. The Light Lina at $700 lowest. It's just kind of wild, and that's a light play, but there is one near mint before it's $850. You can see people coming in trying to make accounts to sell big-end cards just straight away. I highly suggest buffering your accounts by selling some lower end cards, gaining feedback so that people see you have a trusted track record, and then going with these high end cards, because 3 feedback doesn't install the most confidence that, like, yeah, this guy knows how to handle his cards, you know. I'm not saying that, you know, the accounts won't deliver it to you or anything, but that's why people tend to stay away from those accounts. Dark also up without the waifu bait being one of the best attributes in the entire game. Hida 426.9. I see what you did that. And even Velma USA is up towards 490 when we know that iGas Starlights have something funky going on with them, with a lot of reports that they made them out of the factory for the iGas Starlights, and that the, like, whenever Defo had the Starlights extra all in those packs from Card Brawlers, people were staring at that to like, was that meant to end up in somebody's hands and it just went awry? What's happening with this? A lot of conspiracy theories there, and people came back to, well, Starlights have left the factory before, seemingly not in the right way, and there seems to be a ton of iGas Starlights, and just the entire theory spilling out, and people pointing at how many there are. And to point at the price from before on USA, there's still German ones on tier 0 at $180 or less. Of course, code the What's Good 5% off, and to support the channel directly. But when we look at the actual price history of USA, nobody was touching it like in April. Look at these, tons of them selling at like 150 or lower, and the people avoiding this one completely, despite being a solid attribute. You see what I did there, Rocks brother. And then we're also looking at this one like people just going ham along with the others now, ignoring that kind of weird wonky history with it on the market and those happening. So with Starlights being so crazy, so all over the place, I do want to point out again the split here of the top end is going insane, which I think it always should have been this kind of divide, that the single that is also high rarity should have been chased after harder. But we are back to junk Starlights as well that don't even get you back the value of your box, with our new cake lady, who the OCG artists have found this, by the way, on Twitter, and are very focused a little bit. So maybe there's a future for it yet with OCG collectors. But look at all of these that are barely the value of a box or under, and some of them very self-explanatory. Super bad hand traps, the wrong flunder, fan favorite archetype that just isn't able to perform and punch up, a very specific condition where you need to target 2 cards versus its quote-unquote history in the game with the Book of Moon, and Albalanatis, a one-of that you might or not play. Like, Storm Dragon's Return from Rira is the original Junk Starlight, and it's reclaiming its status here slowly. Junk Starlights, I think it's okay for them to be quote-unquote junk. I don't think they all have to be money when we're looking at it. It should depend more on the single, its use, how much its actually potential is leading to it, and that is getting rewarded in this market because the Charmers have that mix of always being useful to a degree depending on the attribute and the concentration in the deck, and also what the metagame is. Those are very useful, really strong, good cards. Crazy in the Eldritch Mirror sometimes with Lina. So I think that when it comes down to looking at what Starlights are priced at what, you can see some of them might end up falling without legacy support. Others, it's their history in the game. And then the use of format-dependent hand traps, those can be some of the biggest swings. Be careful what you're going after. And I had this page up just looking at how unimpactful the meta. Look, this card has been juiced when it was hyped that it might be coming back to $20 all the time, right? And now that it's an auto-win button and people have banless spheres in a national meta, Dimensional Barrier is at like less than $20 for its first edition. Let that sink in just a little, right? Like, actually turn the sink on, wash your hands in it, turn it off, dry your hands, and then let it sink in. Because when we look at this and how its history of hype pushes it toward 20 all the time, but it actually is in the thick of its hype, and it is actually slightly under that, people really like the conversation more about Yu-Gi-Oh! Than the gameplay at some times, don't they? Thanks for watching today's Market Watch. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed the conversation, and let me know how you feel about the Starlight market, how it's developed, what craziness is going on, the factory mishaps slash people looking at those. I really do want to hear all of your thoughts on how you feel about the entirety of the Starlight market, as this has to be one of the craziest ones, with people willing to now spend $300 when people were spending less than half of that just 2 months ago, right?